Right, I've got a 15-second timer running, so I'm going to start talking quickly. Hi, I'm Kerry. For those who don't know me, I'm one of the slightly older ones, I guess, as Anders said. I'm going to talk about my initial efforts to start actually doing some unit testing on JavaScript. It's something that I really should have been doing for ages. I'm not a front-end developer, I'm a back-end developer. I've working in Ruby for the last sort of 5 years or so, Java before that. And I've been doing TDD for kind of about 7 or 8 years, I guess, except for some reason in JavaScript. For some reason, even people who test drive everything tend to kind of ignore the JavaScript. Maybe have some integration tests with Capybara or Selenium or something, but they don't really have proper unit tests for their JavaScript code, even though it is code. Generally, I think you just put little bits in your pages. It's not for want of tools. This is just some of the Wikipedia page of JavaScript testing frameworks. JS Unit, Screw Unit, I don't know if you know that one, Q Unit, a whole bunch of them. The thing I didn't like, I mean, Jasmine, this is a Jasmine screenshot, it's one of the most popular ones. The thing that's always struck me a bit odd is that you run your unit tests in a lot of these frameworks in a browser, which kind of seems wrong for unit tests. I know it's JavaScript, so you have to have the DOM involved somewhere, but I kind of think you should run unit tests from the command line. That's just my prejudice, I think. Jasmine Headless WebKit, fortunately, lets you do that. It's basically a wraparound Jasmine that uses the Qt WebKit headless browser, the same as Capybara WebKit. This is a very simple Jasmine test in CoffeeScript and in JavaScript. Basically, it's a bit like RSpec, for those of you who know that. You describe something, and then in there you nest a load of specifications with it, and you have it's 2 equal as one of the assertions. You have a whole bunch of different types of things you can assert. And you run it from the command line, and it doesn't fire up a browser that you can see. It just tells you whether things passed or failed. Again, if anyone's familiar with RSpec, the output looks very similar. So this is the sort of dummy app that I'm going to use for the talk. It's a text encryptor. You type text and it encrypts it in the other box. Those who are observant might notice the encryption is that super secure ROT13. Here's the JavaScript. There's an encrypt function which takes the value of the first field, calls an AJAX function on the server, passes it the text, and then update is a callback which takes the text out of the data and shoves it in the other field. And the first function is bound to the key up event. Installing Jasmine Headless WebKit in a Rails project, which is what this is. Basically, just it's a gem, put it in a gem file. Otherwise, you can do it standalone. Depends on the type of project you're using. The Jasmine Spec Extras gives you Jasmine jQuery, which gives you a lot of extra utilities working with jQuery. You give it a simple config file. Basically, just tell it these are the files that you want the sources in. These are the files that the tests are in. These are the helpers, and then here's the various directories where you can find stuff. And Jasmine jQuery provides you with fixtures. So here's basically the simplest HTML that we need to make the JavaScript work. So you don't have to load your entire app's HTML. You can just have a kind of cut down version. And then we just load that in a before block up here and say, before you run each test, load a new copy of that thing. Oh, I'm going to talk really quickly. Here's a test for our update function. So we update the field, and then using a normal jQuery selector, we say that the value of that should equal the value in the data that we gave to it. And we run it, and it fails. It says it can't find update, which is the function we're trying to test. Anyone who's used CoffeeScript will know the reason why it can't find it, and that's because CoffeeScript wraps everything in an anonymous function, which it then calls, which is nice because it means everything's hidden from the global namespace, but it means it's also hidden from the tests. So you have to do something to get it visible from the tests, and that something is IM Anders, and you say, Anders, how do you do this? And he says, put it in a class. So we move the key up binding into the constructor for the class, and then at in the document ready thing, all we do is we create a new encryptor, which then binds everything, and it works as before. So now we can test it. This is actually a test for the other function, a bit more complicated because now we're spying on the jQuery get function, which means we're basically using a fake version of it. So we call yeah, okay. We check that we called the right jQuery thing. This is a gotcha that I always fall for. CoffeeScript, which I put a match on the end, which doesn't take any arguments. I forget to put the brackets, and then it passes, even though it hasn't been called. If you use CoffeeScript, you're bound to get called by that at some point. Disclaimer, I don't really know anything about all that stuff. I've only just started doing it, so I'm certainly not an expert. I just thought I'd share some of my kind of first steps in in what I was doing, and obviously obligatory lolcat. Kind of a cheating extra slide. Plug. Plug, next Tuesday, Brewery Tap. We're doing something hands-on, Ruby-ish. Don't know what yet, but it'll be fun, so come along, bring a laptop, have some beer, write some Ruby, have a chat.